I first realized that the world does not exist for humans. Not when I saw that book, but earlier in the years when I could still sleep soundly and still be sure that I belonged to this world when I woke up. At that time, I still believed that dreams were just the noise of the brain, the shadows of the day, things that could be forgotten, ignored, and rationally explained, until I began to remember some things in my dreams that should not be remembered. The initial anomaly was not obvious, just some deviations in the details. I would walk through a strange street in my dream, but I knew clearly what would appear after turning the corner at the end of the street. I would get lost in a building I had never been to, but I could accurately say which door was empty and which door led to a deeper place. This knowing did not come from reasoning, but like a memory written into the mind in advance. I once comforted myself. This is an illusion caused by long-term reading of ancient books and historical materials. After all, when a person's consciousness is repeatedly immersed in the past, they will occasionally mistake fiction for reality. But the problem is, the things in those dreams do not belong to any known history. The sky in the dream always presents a color that is difficult to describe, like gray. But in the depths of the gray, there is a dim blue surging. The arrangement of the stars violates all the astronomical common sense. I know, they are not stationary, but are slowly, more like breathing, moving. What makes me even more uneasy is the architecture. Those buildings do not conform to the logic of any human civilization. They have no clear entrances and exits. The angles of the walls are not 90 degrees, and even not any measurable angle. When I try to use reason to judge their structure, a faint pain will come from inside my head, like some kind of warning. In my dream, I felt an instinctive fear of this, but I did not escape. Instead, I went deeper and deeper, until one night, I heard a voice in my dream. It wasn't a language, at least, not a human language. It was more like a vibration, a wave that directly affected the depths of my consciousness. I couldn't repeat its content, but I still knew its meaning after waking up. That kind of knowing was not reassuring, but instead brought a nauseating certainty as if some truth had been forcibly stuffed into my brain without my consent. After waking up, I found myself sitting in bed for a whole hour. The sky outside the window was not yet bright, but I couldn't close my eyes anymore. For the first time, I had a thought. Those dreams were not produced by me. Once this thought appeared, it could no longer be dispelled. In the following days, I began to deliberately avoid sleep. I used coffee, drugs, and compulsive wakefulness to fight against the darkness, but the body will eventually betray the will. When I fall into the dream again, I find that I can no longer return to the original entrance. Dreams are no longer progressive. They throw me directly into the deepest part. It is a space without a horizon, and the ground is made of some kind of dark stone, but it produces a slight pulsation when walking, as if it is not a dead thing. I realized that it was not the ground, but a part of a huge existence, and this cognition made me instinctively want to vomit, but found that the body in the dream did not have this physiological reaction. A city stands in the distance. If it can still be called a city, it is not composed of individual buildings, but more like an extension of some kind of overall structure. The tower-like structures are intertwined, growing, and overlapping each other, without clear boundaries. I can't judge their height, because the line of sight will be distorted when approaching a certain critical point. I know I shouldn't get close, but I still walked over. On the edge of the city, I saw the first book. It was not placed in any conspicuous position, but was half embedded in the stone structure, as if it had grown there. The material of the book pages is not like paper, but more like some kind of treated film, covered with fine textures. I didn't open it immediately. I just stood there, and a thought kept emerging in my mind. This is not for humans to read. But my hand still reached out. The moment I touched the book, a violent dizziness swept over my consciousness. I didn't see any specific pictures, but as if I had experienced an uncountable time span in an instant. I knew some things, but couldn't translate them into language. For example, human civilization is not the apex of evolution. Time does not flow in one direction. Consciousness does not belong to the individual. These concepts were not presented in words or pictures, but rather implanted directly into my cognition in the form of a fact. I feel fear, not because of the content itself, but because I realize the reason I can understand them is because they are allowed to be understood by me. When I woke up from the dream, it was already light. I found my hands trembling, as if still retaining the touch of that book. What's more terrifying is that I realized that I could no longer remember the specific details of the dream, but I clearly remember the feeling of being watched. It does not come from a specific direction, but a sense of omnipresence. From that day on, I began to find anomalies in reality. The books on the bookshelf will have subtle changes in arrangement when I'm not paying attention. The length of the street seems longer than in my memory. Occasionally, in the crowd, I will see a certain face lose the proportions that humans should have in a moment, and then quickly return to normal. I haven't told anyone. I instinctively know that speaking out will only accelerate a certain process. Until I saw that book in reality, in the basement of an old bookstore. It lay quietly in the corner, with no title on the cover. When I realized that it was completely consistent with the things in my dream, I understood one thing. I have not come here for the first time. And what frightened me more was not the existence of that book, but another thought that emerged from the bottom of my heart. I didn't discover it. I was guided here.